This episode is made possible by our sponsor, Omega Bright Wellness. I've taken their omega-3 supplements for many years, and so has my wife, and that's why I invited them to sponsor my podcast. I'm proud to have them. You can find all of their products online at omegabrightwellness.com, and bright is intentionally misspelled B-R-I-T-E, omegabrightwellness.com. This episode is also sponsored by Landmark College, another institution that I have warm personal relationship with in Putney, Vermont. It's the college of choice for students who learn differently. Learn more at lcdistraction.org.
I don't know if they have that in Massachusetts, but they had the PSATs in New York, and that was like what you took in 11th grade. And I remember everybody kind of huddling around the principal at my high school, and everybody was showing him their scores. We had just gotten them in, and I remember him looking at my score, and then it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And he looked at it, and he looked up at me like right in my eye and around all of these peers, and he said, "You're not going to college, are you?"
Hello and welcome to Distraction. I'm your host, Dr. Ned Hallowell. We have a truly special guest today. I know I always say the guests are special, and they always are, but this one has truly very personal significance to me, and I almost get choked up thinking about it. But Tracy Eisenberg is this wonderful woman's name, and she teaches school at the Shady Hill School in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where all three of my children went. It's a pre-K through 8. Is it still 8, Tracy?
Yes, correct.
Pre-K through 8 and co-ed, and it really is, I think, the perfect school. I've never seen a school that's like it. It's very hard to go to that school and not come out with a solid sense of who you are and sort of liking yourself and liking life. And it's in the paint there. You know, there's just a respect for people and an encouragement to be playful and experiment and grow and develop. And Tracy is the embodiment of what that school represents. I mean, she just does it beautifully, wonderfully. She taught one of my kids, Jack, who remembers her to this day as his favorite teacher. And to give you an idea of what kind of teacher she is, one day Jack came in to class and he hadn't done his homework. And to cover it up, he raised his hand and, sort of being a wise guy, and said, I don't know what he called you, Miss Eisenberg or whatever, and said, how about if you let me teach the class today? And he, of course, thought she would say, Jack, what are you being a wise guy? But what did she say? She said, fine, come right up and go at it. And that was such a brilliant move. How many elementary school teachers do you think would have the presence of mind and the flexibility to know that that's exactly what this rather shy boy needed, was a chance to stand up and grow leaps and bounds in one school day. And that's just one of many examples of what a brilliant, creative, innovative teacher Tracy Eisenberg is. And she's in my Hall of Fame for sure, and she's in Jack's, and I know she's in my wife's Hall of Fame as well. It's just, you have no idea how loved you are, Tracy, by so many, many, many people. She also shares with me the gift of ADHD. She has it, and as you listeners know, I have it, and she's been very open about it, which is quite wonderful, you know, because it's only in doing that we bring it out of the realm of shame and stigma where it should not be. I know for a fact this condition is a potential superpower, and Tracy has lived that message and passes it along to her students. So, well, you didn't come here to listen to me talk, but I just have to tell you what a treat it is to have you here, and just I know you'll be modest, but for listeners, this is a master teacher. This is someone who knows children, knows what she's doing. It's in her bones, it's in her DNA. She just gets it. And any child who's lucky enough to have her will be changed in a good way forever. Witness my son, Jack. Well, with that as introduction, welcome, Tracy Eisenberg.
Thank you, Ned. I'm not sure. I'm speechless. You're very kind and generous with your words, but
well, it's absolutely.
But it is a
true.
pleasure to be here, and I'm so glad to be able to connect with you live, at least in voice.
Yes, me too. Me too. It's quite wonderful. Well, tell us, first of all, what is it like now teaching little kids? Because, you're not a college teacher, you're an elementary school teacher, kids who are squirrely and want to interact and, breathe on each other. And what is it like? How are you handling it at Shady Hill?
Well, first I have to say that, we had to kind of just jump into it last spring. And last spring, I think we were all in shock, and we were, that saying building the plane and flying it at the same time. And we kind of limped through until June. It was a really hard spring for everybody. And the school, Mark Stanek and everybody, the maintenance crew, they have worked so hard to get this school ready so we can have as many kids on campus at the same time. So we're doing live school every other week for the middle school and every day for the lower school. And because of the numbers, and because we have such a large campus, we're lucky enough that we can have the kids remain 6 feet apart in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Mm-hmm. But what we needed to do was increase teachers. So we've decreased the class size and increased teachers. So I now have 12 students in my class.
And what grade do you teach?
I teach fifth grade, and I typically have 18 students. Mm-hmm. So I have 1/3 fewer students, and it's different. It's incredibly different, but the joy that the kids have when we're on campus. I'm about to go on campus tomorrow for the second week. And there is, I can't describe it, the joy that the kids have seeing each other live is, it's heartening. They just want to be together. We're social creatures. And
yes.
Fifth graders are not independent enough to be successful on the computer, on Zoom, every day, all day. It's just, that's just not who they are. They're not, they don't have the skill set or the drive or the emotional stamina for it. So I feel really lucky that we can have every other week live. And then because my class is so much smaller, I can actually see all of my students on the Zoom screen at the same time, which changes the game. Mm-hmm. If I have to toggle between pages, I could have a couple of kids, sitting under their kitchen table, right? And I wouldn't even know for a few minutes, But so it's been a challenge, but the school has done everything they can. I couldn't ask for them to do anything differently or anything more. And the kids feel it. They're grateful to be on campus, and they realize it. And that's kind of like the special byproduct.
And they're all wearing masks,
we're so
or
lucky
not?
We are here.
Are they wearing masks?
Oh yes, we're masks all the time. We have mask breaks outside, but then the kids have to be 10 feet apart and sitting. And we spend as much time. They have tents all over campus, and so we have outdoor classes whenever we can. Mm-hmm. Windows are open, the doors are open. Mm-hmm. We have the desks and chairs are 6 feet apart in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So we're really cautious. But then when we get to go outside and have classes outside, it's like, the kids are they're incredibly resilient. It's just like, okay, if we're having a class outside, we're having class outside, and they're doing it.
Yeah.
I just, I think that when the bad weather kind of rolls in, we just have to make sure that the kids have proper gear, right? There's no bad weather. There's only bad clothing. That's what I heard, I think, from the Swedes. we need to get better clothing, I think.
That's a great line. And you ask the parents not to come on campus, right?
That's correct. They can only drive and drop off their kids. They're not allowed on campus. Right. So every meeting that we have is via Zoom. I will never see parents in person on campus this year.
Yeah. And how does the online part of it work?
What do you mean, the actual teaching?
No, like last week you were online, correct?
Oh, that's correct. So what we've done differently, at least in the 5th grade, I could speak specifically about 5th grade because I think the older grades do things a little bit differently with the kids being more independent and capable. But in the 5th grade, we have a maximum of teaching time on Zoom for 3.5 hours per day. So the math teacher, the science teacher, myself, we have to coordinate. There are arts, but it's abbreviated from what it used to be. But so the kids have 3.5 hours of explicit teaching, and then the rest of is rather than asynchronous working tasks where the kids would just be offline, we keep the camera on. And we have the kids work independently. So when they have questions, we're right there. So between 8 and 3, the kids have access to a teacher, except for recess breaks and lunch break. So they have an hour and a half of off-screen time entirely. No, they're not looking at any computer screen. But at every other minute in the day, if they have questions about their assignments, the teacher is right there. And rather than emailing back and forth and having the hour or two delay, and it works so much better than it did last spring. I mean, significantly, kids like it because they have access to one another. We play games, we take breaks, we do silly things like as we would in the classroom. So they're getting social nourishment. They're getting the academic support that they need in the moment. It's not helpful to have a question and then get it answered 4 hours later when you lost momentum. And then they also have time that they could be quiet. So even when they're reading quietly, I have access to them and they have access to me. And that has made all the difference in the world.
What's the difference between the way you're doing it now and the way you did it last spring?
Well, last spring, I think, there was, I would teach for maybe an hour a day and I'd have access to them for an hour or an hour and a half. And that's it during the entire day. And so they would be working asynchronously and they would look at an assignment and inevitably they had questions because kids, they need to ask 2 or 3 times just to make sure that they're on the right track. Or maybe they have no idea they're on the right track and they couldn't move forward. So then assignments wouldn't come in. They would email me a question, but I didn't get it right away. And then they put their assignment down and it was just, there was no traction. And now we're getting work done and kids are feeling supported. And it's actually working for families because we have parents that are working at home and they're not bothered by their kids saying, I don't understand what to do. And they get to work. The kids get their questions answered. They're getting their work done. And they also, when they say they're done, they can say, oh, I'm finished. And then I take a look at it and say, okay, let's see how we can elevate your work. You know what? You have, you wrote two sentences here. Let's see if we can elevate this to get another supporting idea in. So I can push them where they need to be, but when they're working on it rather than a day late.
Right. No. So asynchronous means they're not together.
Correct.
Whereas you're doing it now, you're doing it synchronously together.
Yes, the entire day, except for, and they love it. And they love it. We'll take stretch breaks. The school has implemented this great wellness app, and the kids meditate every day. And sometimes we do it in the middle of the day. Sometimes we're experimenting when it feels best. We're just taking stretch breaks, meditating, playing games, being silly. And doing work. So they're also nourished much more. I'm hearing fewer reports from parents that their kids are really sad and disengaged.
Well, and are you in your classroom when you're doing this, or are you at home?
Both. It depends. When I have my son, I'm home. And then he's on his classroom with his teacher. And then when he's with his other mother at her house, I sometimes go in. It really depends. Yeah, we have a total flexibility and support from the school to work from home or in the classroom.
How has it impacted the faculty? Do you still feel collegiality and togetherness?
That's hard. That's actually really hard. Do you remember Josh Horowitz? My colleague, I think Tucker may have had Josh.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I'm never on campus when he's on campus. And, he's one of my closest friends. We've been working together for 20 years. I haven't seen him live, since, Well, gosh, probably this summer while we were on campus setting up our classrooms.
Wow.
But it's really different. So that's, but we Zoom, we have our faculty meetings by Zoom, but there's, the spontaneous connections that you get. It just doesn't happen. Walking on the paths, it's just very infrequent.
Do you ever see Mr. T?
Oh, I do. I actually have his son, and he had my son last year. So yes, he's a great guy, isn't he?
Please, absolutely. Please give him my regards.
I will do that.
He had Lucy or Tucker or both of them. I can't remember, but
yes,
you have so many wonderful teachers over there. Honest to goodness, it is. I really do believe, and I've seen many, many, many schools. I think it is the closest thing to perfection in the world of elementary schools that there is out there. And I'm so glad, because most places the kids are really complaining about how difficult the online part of it is. But you found a way that the kids are enjoying it.
As much as they can, right? Yeah. I mean, the kids prefer live, but if they have to have it online,
right,
being together all day is easier and more fun and engaging for them. They're less alone.
Yeah, and the alternating. My big thing is connection, and I talk about vitamin C, vitamin connect, and the problem these days is we're all living with a vitamin connect deficiency. I mean, my wife Sue, who's incredibly extroverted, she's every day saying, "I need more people. I need more people," and I think it sounds like you folks at Shady Hill are doing the best you can to provide that vitamin C. Yes.
Mark made the most difficult decision, but the right decision. We were going to have the entire school on campus at the same time, rather than alternating the middle school A/B weeks. Yeah. But because of the metrics, and then there have been a couple of cases, he decided to decrease the density of people on campus. And it's the right decision, because I think that'll allow us to stay on campus even longer. Good. But we do have it every other week, which will help sustain us.
Absolutely. I'm just so impressed and so heartened to hear this. I actually have a couple of patients of mine who are at Shady Hill, and they're reporting the same thing, that you guys are handling it so well, and I'm not surprised. Omega Bright, OmegaBrightWellness.com, has been a sponsor of this podcast for I don't know how long. I invited them to join us because my wife Sue and I have taken their omega-3 supplements for years and years and years. I've known Carol Locke, the woman who developed all the products, for many years. She's a graduate of Harvard Medical School and a superb physician, and incredibly careful with the products that her company creates. She has extremely high standards that are uncompromising. She's also a really nice person. They're a natural fit for the show because their products help with mood regulation, anxiety, as well as focus and attention, as well as being good for your entire body. They're powerful anti-inflammatory action. You can find all of their supplements online at OmegaBright, BRITE, wellness.com. That's OmegaBrightWellness.com. And distraction listeners, you can save 20% on your first order by entering the promo code PODCAST2020. That's PODCAST 2020. All right, now back to the show. Can we branch off and talk a little bit about ADHD, a condition you and I share?
Yes, please.
How did you find out about it?
Well, becoming a teacher helped me learn a lot about myself, but it took years, so I've been teaching. This is my 29th year of teaching, and I have such an enormous sample size of teaching kids for 29 years, and you start to see some similarities and struggles. Yeah. So what always started with, we notice the kids that have ADHD because we're not celebrating them, right? We're saying, something's not working. Right. Because I think I think for kids with ADHD, school is the hardest time in their lives.
Right.
They have to do everything that they're told to do in the way that they're, that might not be the best for who they are as a learner. Right. And that was true for me growing up in the 70s and 80s on Long Island in New York. It was really hard, and I was not a successful student. And so I started teaching in New York in the Village at this small school, city and country school, great school, charming, and the oldest progressive school, actually 1 year older than Shady Hill.
If you hadn't been a good student, why did you want to become a teacher?
It's funny that you ask. I kind of fell into it, and nobody. I don't think my teachers would have predicted success for me. I didn't test well as most ADHD kids do not. I mean, I remember, I don't know if they have that in Massachusetts, but they had the PSATs in New York, and that was like what you took in 11th grade. And I remember everybody kind of huddling around the principal at my high school, and everybody was showing him their scores. We had just gotten them in, and I remember him looking at my score, and then it was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. And he looked at it, and he looked up at me like right in my eye and around all of these peers, and he said, "You're not going to college, are you?" And I just kind of grabbed the piece of paper away from him, and I was like, I didn't even know how to react. I just remember skulking away and being mortified, and it was just a terrible moment. So what happened? So I do go to college. I go to community college to get my grades up. I get to the University of Buffalo, and kind of limp through that as well. I think the biggest role, I think it was my brother. My brother had this enormous impact on me. He was very paternal, and he was very worried about me. And I was just always flitting around, and he was just saying, "Let's go to Adelphi University, and I want you to check out this teaching department." And I was like, "Oh God." I just didn't. And I was like, teaching. And I didn't really feel like I had many skills to offer anybody, anything, except I was funny. I was funny and resilient. And that's what I could identify at that point. And so I started this education program at Adelphi, and they let me in on as a trial basis. If I could, do well in a couple of classes, which I did, then they let me matriculate. So then I'm there. And then it's time for me to start doing my student teaching. And they put me into the school district where I grew up. And I was like, oh God, I can't do this again. And I was like, no, this was at Belmore Merrick. And I was like, I can't. So I went to talk to a professor, and I said, I'm thinking about dropping out of the program. I have no interest in going back to the place where, I failed once. I can't do it again. And she said, I want you to check out a school in the Village. And she said, it's sitting in country school. I want you to go check it out and then come back and talk to me. And it's really, I had one of those, moments where it was a turning point for me. So I walked into this really, cool brownstone building, and it was like walking into my home. And I loved it immediately, from the smells to the people to then the curriculum that they were describing, their entire curricula from age 2 through age 14. And I then volunteered there for 2 weeks. And then they offered me to do my student teaching there. And I never left. 6 years later, I was there for 6 years until I moved to Boston. And it was about teaching people, not just facts. It was about teaching like the human being. It was about teaching character development. Who are you as a learner? Okay, so let's say you're not the learning doesn't come easily, but how do we get you to learn? How do we exploit your strengths and mitigate the weaknesses and help you get through this really hard time in your life, which is school? And I learned with the kids. Yes,
that's so beautiful.
Why did you leave there? And so I fell into it. I have my brother to thank for this because then it was something that I became passionate about, and I never had a passion
Yeah.
I didn't have a passion. I didn't think I could do anything. Yeah. I was great, like waitressing. I was good with people. I loved waitressing, and I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll move to Europe and make that a career. But it was an accident. And then I fell in love with teaching, and I fell in love with the kids, especially the kids who struggled the most.
Yeah.
Because I really empathized with them, and I was like, I know, but it doesn't have to be this hard. And life will not always be this hard, and hang in there, and let's develop some tools.
And you knew that firsthand.
I knew it firsthand. And I learned it firsthand with them. But, the first couple of years, I don't think I knew it. But it's just like I found it while I was working with the kids.
Yeah.
So it was a two-pronged approach. It was like 2 for 1. The kids were learning and I was learning. I was like, wait a second. And that's what I loved about Sitting Country and Shady Hill School, because I become a better teacher every year. And they invest, and the same thing at City Country School. They invest in the teachers, so we become better people. We become better teachers, and there's nothing better than that, right? Like, I'm still learning every year. Absolutely. I learn with the kids.
Okay, joining me now is Professor Eric Mattey of the wonderful Landmark College, an institution from which I have an honorary degree. They're also our wonderful sponsor, and they're located in wonderful, beautiful downtown Putney, Vermont. Actually, not downtown Putney, but outside of Putney. Welcome to the podcast Distraction, Professor Mattey.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Hollowell, and thank you for all your influences, honestly, on my teaching and the mission of Landmark College. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, I can't thank you and all your colleagues enough. I mean, Landmark College really does an amazing job serving folks like me, folks who learn differently. And, you're the best in the business. I always love to speak to someone on the faculty there and just get a little insight. So can you tell us what you particularly do at Landmark?
Well, in terms of the faculty at Landmark, I feel like one of the luckiest people possible. I came onto the faculty 21 years ago at a time when Landmark was just truly a mecca of education and learning, and these incredible teachers that are on the faculty there. And coming right out of graduate school with no teaching experience, I really learned Landmark College philosophy from point zero, which is another one of our teaching principles, but just really learned how to teach there and influenced by some of the most incredible people there. So, but I am a faculty member, a professor of communication, and I run the college radio station and teach about a dozen courses in communication. And also I coach the men's basketball team. So I wear many hats.
That's fantastic. It's so you know how good exercise is for our brain.
It's I mean, all the evidence is really conclusive on this. And, when we talk about training and working with students in the basketball realm, and we really still talk about the whole student and complete wellness, but physical training is part of that, physical fitness. And, with the guides, we emphasize not only training for basketball, but also functional everyday fitness, getting enough steps in, movement, sleep, and obviously nutrition, but that whole physical well-being. And of course, as you know, increased memory and fitness is shown to help with executive functioning and time management and cognitive load and memory, and so it's just, and we talk about it across all my hats at Landmark, how important just physical well-being is.
Yeah. I also understand you're a pioneer of online learning, and boy, is that ever important these days. Do you have any brief remarks about that?
First of all, people can learn online, and it is a new and really hot medium of education. Mm-hmm. And we're making this epic transition as educators into this new world of online learning. And I've been doing online teaching for a number of years now, and I'm getting a lot more emails from my fellow faculty and colleagues out there about how to do this and how to do it effectively. But it can be done.
People struggle with it. Can you give a few quick tips, both for teachers and for students, how to make online learning less onerous?
It comes back to good teaching. First of all, just being a content expert, obviously, and knowing your material. But secondly, being flexible with your teaching abilities, diversifying assignments, being able to adapt your teaching to diverse learners, and all people are diverse learners and neurodivergent in some way. Yeah. And so those are two really important things. But the most important thing is the rapport, is the presence that you have with your students and making a connection. You have to work harder at rapport online. And so yes. I talk about those things a lot in my work as well with, just how to build rapport through feedback and connections and assignments and engaging activities, asynchronously, synchronously, and how to do that. But those three things, rapport and knowing your content and diversifying and adapting your teaching.
That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much, Professor Eric Mattey of Landmark College, the absolute best in the world at what they do. Thank you so much for joining us, and a real pleasure to get a brief glimpse into your work at Landmark College in beautiful Putney, Vermont.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you again. All right, to learn more about Landmark College, go to lcdistraction.org. That's lcdistraction.org. Why did you move to Boston?
Love. Yes. And and it was either Boston or Washington, D.C. And Boston won out.
So she got a job in Boston and you followed her?
She went to graduate school, yes. She went to graduate school to become a therapist, actually. We're no longer together. But, I think that, again, another great woman, and also helping kids in a different way, more in your line of work. And, but yeah, that brought me to Shady Hill.
Had you known you were gay all along growing up?
Yes. When I knew the earliest memory I have is when I was 8 years old, and I wanted to marry my third grade teacher, Miss Cucci. I don't know where she is, but I was like, I would like for her to be my wife. But I didn't have the language, really. I didn't know what lesbian was, and I just knew it was also taboo. I wasn't telling a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, but so here you were a different learner, and your sexual identity was, it was in a taboo place back then.
Yes.
And you were groping your way along. Did you have a guardian angel or someone other than your brother who looked out for you?
I think my brother was the biggest guardian angel. And still to today, he's my number one champion. He is the most loyal person ever that I've ever met. And to be sure, like, we've had our difficulties, but like the fact that he is, I can call him on a dime and he would be here in a second. But I think that there's a lot of luck. There's a lot of luck, right? You pay attention to the opportunities. And I always knew when I was good at something. I didn't deny it. Like, I knew I was a great waitress. I knew it, and, I knew I was funny, and I was always the joker. And I knew that was one of the things that, that when my friends got together, we would have a great time. And, I also knew my limits. So here's an interesting thing is my brother and my father were like a couple years into teaching. They're like, okay, you're going to be an administrator. Now you're going to work your way up. And I was thinking, whoa, no way. I do not have the skill set that is required to do that. And it would then make my life miserable. Why would I do that? I don't need the prestige. I don't need the extra, the money. I'm not looking for that. I'm completely fulfilled. I'm getting better at what I'm doing every year. And I don't want to go anywhere. And they eventually, like after year 7, and I was like, no. They stopped barking up. I was like, enough. I don't have that skill set, and I'm okay with it. I don't need that skill set because I don't want to be an administrator.
When was the moment that you said, okay, this ADD thing, I think I've got it?
Oof. I don't even think I was the first person to say it. I think everybody around me knew it. Kind of like everybody around me knew that I was gay, and they were just waiting for me to say it. Because, the behaviors are pretty obvious. And I'm I present very, how obviously, that, boys and girls present very differently, generally. Right. Not everybody, but generally. And my symptoms are very kind of aligned with the male, very impulsive and very, very, very active, hyper, inattentive, all those sorts of things. So it was when I was in my 30s that it was confirmed, and I was tested for it and it was confirmed, but I already knew it. It was just like, okay, and but by then, I started talking about this in the classroom.
Yeah, good for you.
Then I started sharing kids like my struggles with, I don't even really think that, we call like learning challenges, learning disabilities. It's just, we haven't caught up. The language hasn't caught up with this. It's just different learning styles, right?
Let me tell you, Tracy, let me tell you my name for it, because I have it. And ADHD is a terrible name. It's not a deficit of attention at all. It's an abundance of attention. The challenge is to control it, and so I call it VAST, Variable Attention Stimulus Trait. So it's a trait. It's like being left-handed. It's not a disorder. It can become a disorder if you don't know how to manage it, but it can become a tremendous asset, as it has in your life. So and it's usually a little bit asset, a little bit problematic, and my job is to maximize the upside and minimize the downside, and you've just done that. You the two most important things: marry the right person, find the right job. So you did that, and you're helping others do the same. So when you didn't ever feel ashamed of having it.
Not as a grown-up. I felt a lot of shame because of my failures in elementary school.
Yeah.
I just felt like, a loser. I just couldn't do anything. I wasn't successful. I didn't just have ADHD. I had trouble learning how to read, to write. I mean, I had the whole gamut. It was just. So
you're like me. You have dyslexia too. I've got them both. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have dyslexia. I have a language-based learning disorder, which, influences. So it's different than dyslexia, but it just makes learning really hard. And then you just, years of compounded failure really, it takes its toll. And I'm sure I was struggling with depression as a kid. But we just didn't, I was pulled out for special classes. I graduated from high school with a non-regents degree, which is the kind of, standard degree that you get in New York State. I didn't get that. Which was, it didn't affect me at all in my life now, but growing up with these struggles and not having the supports in place, or the people around to help me, gather a tool set or toolkit. And now, that was hard. That was really hard.
Of course it was hard. And now you're in the business of making sure it doesn't happen to other kids. I mean, it was at Shady Hill that our first child, Lucy, was diagnosed in 3rd grade when her teacher said to us, I'll ask Lucy a question and she'll just smile. I don't think she's really heard me. Do you think she might have ADD? I said, oh my gosh. And my wife said, let's go get a good evaluation. So it was, can't remember her name, but she married, Mr. Vorenberg. Yeah.
Amy Vorenberg. Yes.
Yeah. Amy Vorenberg, was then Amy Purcell. She diagnosed my daughter and changed her life forever. I mean, Lucy could have had exactly your story in another school.
Yes.
And feeling bad about herself and all preventable by making this wonderful diagnosis if it's done properly in a strength-based context.
Right. It's the strength-based context rather than the deficit context. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the way you treated Jack, who also has ADHD, you made him feel proud of himself instead of, I'm different. But yeah, we're different, but different in a good way.
Right. Yeah. Right. We're all different. Right? Every single one of us, but some of it's so more public, right?
I know.
It's, some of our differences are public, which makes it hard for some.
Yes. Until you find a teacher like you, and then you start feeling proud of who you are.
Mm. And I think at Shady Hill, that's weird. That's why I love working at Shady Hill, because the teachers, that's what we do, right? We're in the business of people. It's not so much like it's like we're teaching people and helping them become self-aware, help them achieve some agency in what goes on in their lives. I just love that. I just love when we talk about kids, it's like we have to put the kids first, and it's just great. And the community is so committed to it. I mean, we're really, we're a lucky community, right? Because it's curated. It's a curated community. And so the parents are committed. The kids, for the most part, are really committed. The teachers are committed. So we have an embarrassment of riches over there. But everybody deserves this for sure. I'm just in a very lucky environment.
Talk about agency. I mean, when Jack says, why don't you let me teach the class today? And you say, okay, holy moly. And, I mean, that was a life-changing moment. And most teachers would have said, sit down, young man, and do what you're told, and that's not the Shady Hill way. Well, to wrap up, I mean, do you have any thoughts for listeners about how they can help their children during, COVID, and obviously the model at Shady Hill is one that's worked very well there. But a listener who says, my kid is struggling, do you have any general thoughts?
I guess I would say, and I'm thinking about this certainly in terms of my own son, so I have thought about this. Mm-hmm. I even say this to my students sometimes, when they get really stressed about an assignment, let's say. I think I have a point here, but we'll figure that out in a minute. But if they get really stressed out about an assignment, I'll say, listen, if they said, I stayed up until 11 o'clock doing this homework. And I said, listen, this is 5th grade. You're not curing world hunger. I would prefer a well-rested child than a finished homework assignment. I mean, if you've been late every for every assignment, we need to have a different conversation about why this is happening. So, and any given assignment is not worth you sacrificing sleep. Right. And I think that, we as people, as parents, as teachers, this is a crazy time. This is a worldwide pandemic. Yes. And I think that what we have to do is, first and foremost, take care of the emotional health of our kids. So if their kids are struggling because, they're stuck on Zoom, and you have the opportunity, because not everybody has this opportunity to go outside and get fresh air, and don't worry so much about any given homework assignment.
Yes.
It's not they're not, taking a medical exam. It's just forget the math, forget the essay. Right. Cozy up on the couch, watch a movie together, because that nobody's going to remember that math sheet. And if they're struggling with math so much, that again, that's going to be a different conversation. Then we have to take care of like a math deficit in a different way. But I would say emotional health first, and make sure that your child feels connected to the family, because that's their primary, and try to get them out socially as much as you can. FaceTime with other kids in real time, in real life, right? Like 6 feet apart, kicking a ball around. And not worry about the small stuff, which is like the daily homework. If they don't get in a couple of assignments, that's okay. for me, that's okay. And I would just say, what I want is for my son to maintain healthy relationships, to stay intellectually engaged, and realize that this will pass. It may change our lives forever. I hope, we'll never forget this time. This is my son said the other day, he said, when there's a cure and we have a vaccine, everybody in the world is going to be happy about the same thing.
What a great remark.
He said, has that ever happened before? And I'm like, I don't really think so.
Well, the polio vaccine.
Yes. Okay. There it is. See see, neither one of us was around during that time, but yes, but it's like, this is our time, right? Everybody is affected. So I just, try to put things in perspective, which is so easy to say because there are people that are starving, they're hungry, they can't pay their bills. And, so I don't have any words of wisdom, I suppose.
Well, you've already spoken so many, but I think you embody, I always say if schools would take connectedness scores as seriously as they take reading and math scores, we'd be serving our kids a lot better. And you absolutely embody that. I mean, you're all about that, pushing connection in its many different shapes and sizes. And I can't tell you how special you are. And I really, really mean that. And I know I speak for thousands of people that you've touched and the wonderful school that you are a master teacher at. It's actually saying master teacher is sort of against the Shady Hill ethos because they don't want to promote, one person over another. But you are a school that's all about connection and cooperation and growth and experiment and play in the best sense of that word. And I just thank God that my son wandered into your classroom, and I know I speak for so many parents out there. And I'm so glad that you're able to now repair, or give to kids what you didn't get. And you, thanks to your brother and others, you were resilient enough to, make it through a champion. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, Ned, thank you. It's an honor to be a part of your show, and I was just thrilled when you invited me, and I just enjoyed talking to you immensely.
Thanks a million, Tracy. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
All right, well, that's going to do it for today. Wasn't she fantastic? I just, I love everything about her and what she stands for and what they do at her school. And there's no reason that schools everywhere can't take more of that approach. Please continue to reach out to us with your questions, comments, and ideas. Write an email or record a voice memo on your phone and send it to connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. Please like Distraction on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. You can also now find me on my new project. I've started TikToking. Go to TikTok and you can see some videos there. My handle is @Dr. Hallowell, @Dr. Hallowell. I'd love to know what you think. Truly would love to know. It's a new venture for me. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our recording engineer and editor is the estimable Scott Persson, that's with 2 S's. And our producer is the equally estimable Sarah Guertin. I'm Dr. Ned Hallowell, thanking you so much for joining us, and once again thanking the wonderful, magical Tracy Eisenberg for being our guest. Goodbye for now. The episode you just heard was made possible by my good friends at Omega Bright Wellness. I take their supplements every day, and that's why I invited them to sponsor my podcast. Shop online at Omega Bright, and that's BRITE wellness.com.